What sport does is it teaches you together you will be better. Even though you're running 26.2 miles, you'll be floating on this incredible sea of positivity. Anybody can do it, and the feeling you will get will live with you for the rest of your life.
Hi, my name is Rangan Chatterjee. Welcome to Feel Better, Live More. Hello, how are you doing? My name is Rangan. I am the host of this podcast. Welcome. And I really do think we have a very special episode lined up for you today. Now, some of you may know that in just a few days, I am due to be running one of the world's most iconic races, the London Marathon. And if I'm being completely honest, this is going to be me well and truly outside my comfort zone. I'm honestly not sure I would have been doing this had I not been challenged to do it on live radio last year. But I'm really glad that I was challenged because by accepting it, I've been on an incredible voyage of self-discovery. So, in preparation for what I'm told will be a life-changing day, I decided to speak to the London Marathon event director, Hugh Brasher. Now, Hugh's a pretty incredible man in his own right who has been through a lot in life and has a lot of practical wisdom to share. But right at the top of this conversation, I want to be super clear. This is not just a conversation about running or the London Marathon. I actually feel this was a really raw, honest, and authentic conversation about all kinds of things that have relevance to all of us. We talk about how important it is for all of us to try new things, occasionally to get outside of our comfort zone, the incredible power of community, and the magic that happens when hundreds of thousands of people come together for a common goal. Yes, we do talk about this incredible event and its history, the famous atmosphere, the crowd support, and the many other factors that make the London Marathon experience unique. But we also talk about the vision behind the London Marathon, its inspirational aims and objectives that are still based around those that were drawn up by Hugh's father, who co-founded the race 40 years ago. And it may surprise you that they actually have more to do with social unity than sporting prowess. If it's running tips you're after, there are plenty of them here. But we also talk about the importance of personal goals and how there's more to marathon success than a certain finishing time. We talk about making mass participation events like these more diverse than they currently are, supporting the back of the pack runners, but also how we can all use physical activity as a tool for life transformation. Whether you run, walk, spectate, volunteer, watch it on TV, or even have no interest in running and the London Marathon, my hope is that this conversation might inspire you to one day get involved. It could be the London Marathon, or perhaps you'll seek out an event more local to you. The point, which you make so beautifully in our conversation, is that the sport is almost secondary. At its core, this is about community, commitment, coming together, and celebrating the human spirit. I hope you enjoy listening. And now, my conversation with Hugh Brasher. The London Marathon is and has been probably one of the main focuses for me for this entire year. It's been there in the background for me. We'll get into the story of how that all happened later on, but you are in charge of the London Marathon. And I've been trying to sort of figure out what is it about this race that seems to have such appeal for so many people. And literally a few hours ago, my cousin Bobby sent me a text. He said to me, Rangan, the run is incredible. Even before the run, strangers are saying good luck to you on the streets. Underground drivers are doing the same on the tannoy. This just shows you the buzz that you get before, during, and after the run. The atmosphere that I had on that day is not something I've ever found again since. I will now say, for sure, it's my favorite day of my entire life by some distance. If I had to redo one day again, I would choose it over any concert I've been to, any birthday, and any holiday.
Wow. Yeah.
So why was I sent that text? What's so special about the London Marathon?
I mean, genuinely, that description, how he's laid that out, is for so many people, that is so true. And why? I think it's because you will be floating, even though you're running 26.2 miles, you'll be floating on this incredible sea of positivity where people, as you know, total strangers, are wishing you the best in the journey that you're on, those 26.2 miles. And we are lucky in life if we get 3 or 4 people that genuinely want us to be successful. But on that day, you will have tens of thousands of people shouting your name. Put it on your vest, put it on your T-shirt. And, you know, we can't be Harry Kane at Wembley. We can't be Andy Murray at Wimbledon. But on that day, you will feel like that when they're playing at their best. And you will float, if that is possible, floating 26.2 miles. But that is the feeling and the emotional connection that the crowd, the incredible crowd that come and support, will give you.
I'm getting tingles just thinking about it, because as we speak, as we record this, what is it, 12 days?
Yeah, it's 12 days to go, and a bit less than that. You will already be running in at this moment in 12 days' time. So yeah, the final stage of the Odyssey will have started.
For people sort of listening now or watching this who maybe don't run and, you know, listen to this show for, let's say, health advice and inspiration, you know, why does the London Marathon matter? Why does it matter beyond the 45,000 people who actually turn up and run it on the streets? What goes on beyond that, and why should everyone really care?
Look, it's a great question, and there are just so many different answers to it. But it is about inspiration. It's about inspiring people on their health journey, be it their physical health journey or their mental health journey. And that latter piece, that mental health journey, now more than ever, over what we as a society or world has been through and is still going through, that is so important. And when you break down running, it's incredibly simple. It's just one step in front of another. But you have control over whether you take that step or you don't take that step. And for each person, there's research going on at the moment that for each person that does the London Marathon, another 200 people have been inspired to take up that journey of positive physical and mental health. So you've got this incredible community spirit coming together. And it's just like, I say it's basically 40,000 people running on the streets of London. But around them, the biggest street party in the world is going on, celebrating those 40,000 slightly mad souls doing this incredible thing, 26.2 miles. It's not normal, but it's achievable if you put your mind to it. And that's, I think, the power of what the London Marathon has become, which started with, 1981. My father co-founded it with John Disley. At that stage, it was mainly men. It was like only 300 women, just under 300 women out of 6,000, just over 6,000 finishers in the first event were women. Now it is a sea of humanity of everyday people.
That statistic is pretty incredible, that for every one person who does the race, 200 others get inspired. What is that? Is that from watching it on telly? Is that from seeing people who look like them? I guess not the elite athletes say, oh, I guess that looks like a regular mum just like me and she's doing it. I mean, what's going on there? How does it inspire people beyond that actual event?
So as you've said, it's like, because what you see is what you believe. And therefore you see someone looking like you doing the event. You go, well, if they can do it, I can do it. But there's also a huge charity fundraising connection. So about 3/4 of the runners will be raising funds for charity, but about 1.6 million people have donated to the people running. So even though you've got 40,000 running, you've got 1.6 million that have donated. You've got 4 million watching on telly in the UK live. let alone those that are following it up with, sort of on demand. You've then got it transmitted in 196 countries around the world. And that incredible, it's the stories, it's the human stories that make the London Marathon what it is. It's not the stories so much of the elite athletes. They're amazing performances, incredible performances, but it's that connection where people realize that actually that person is the same as me, or that person has a story and I have one that is different, but is motivating for me to go on that journey.
That text from my cousin that I mentioned, the first part of that, which I didn't read out before, was him saying, why did I first do it? I did it because I used to watch it every year on the BBC. I used to see it. And I thought it'd be great to do it. And it'd be great to say I've done the world's most famous marathon. But he said, since he has done it, he said, those reasons mean nothing anymore. I don't want to say that I've done it. I just want to experience that day again. And I guess for someone like myself, who's 12 days out from my first marathon, reading that, hearing you talk, it gives me tingles. I'm thinking, well, yes, it may be different this year because of what's been going on in the world. But I'm thinking, what is, maybe it's something that you can read about, you can be told about it, but maybe it's something that you can't really quite get until you actually do it.
And look, I'm going to love talking to you after the event because it's a feeling that however much I try and describe it, it's almost indescribable. It is just that connection that you have with your fellow runner, with the people supporting you who have been on this journey, and your connection with people that are supporting the fundraising. And I can't promise you that the last 6 miles will feel as you're doing it, the most amazing feeling. But it's afterwards. It's like very often people cross the finish line and they're just in tears. They're just gone through an emotional journey, remembering the reason that they ran, whether it's for a loved one, whether it's for someone they lost, whether it's for themselves, whether it's for their community, for whatever reason, it puts you in a place that actually is a positive place to be. And you've been through this journey. And I would just say to your listeners, it is indescribable. But if you can, anybody can do it. And the feeling you will get, as Bobby said, will live with you for the rest of your life.
Anybody can do it, you say. So this morning, I've been asking people who I've come across in my life, would you sign up for a marathon? Someone close to me said, no way, I don't see the point in pushing my body to that extreme. Someone else said to me, I don't have time to train. I think at the school gate yesterday when someone said, oh, not long till the marathon now, Rongan. I said, yeah, why don't you sign up for next year? Rather you than me. So why is it that something that in your words anybody can do, so many people think is unattainable and not for them?
So I'm going to ask you a question back, because if someone had said to you 2 years ago, before you've gone on the journey that you're going on, was it for you? What would you have said?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hugh. So let's rewind 2 years. For some people, a marathon's on their bucket list. I don't think it was for me. Like, I honestly don't think it was for me. And I think that's because, I would do the park run.
Yep.
Maybe every other week with my son. So that's 5K. That was fine. No real problem. Although, there was a time when I was starting to get hammy discomfort after 2 or 3K. I'd say it's a good point. I probably would have thought, if I'm honest, sounds good, but God knows where I'm going to fit in this sort of time into my already really busy life. And if I do have spare time, I'd probably rather do something different. Now, how did it change for me?
Yeah, that's going to be my next question. That's exactly, how does it feel now?
So, funnily enough, in the 2 weeks preceding to when I found out, stroke agreed to do the marathon, I was struggling with an injury actually, and I couldn't really do the park run. I was sort of the 2K, my right hammy kept going. And my third book had just come out, Feel Better in 5. I was starting off book promo in London for a week, and I was on the Chris Evans Breakfast Show. And, I grew up watching Chris on telly, so it was a bit of a pinch me moment. Even though I'd been on the show before, it was still, this is Chris's show.
Yep.
And we just had a phenomenal conversation. Chris was talking to me for the first 10 minutes about this podcast and saying how it's changed his life and it's, everyone should listen to it. And I was thinking, this is Chris Evans talking about my show. I couldn't quite believe it at that time. Then we spoke about the book and things were going great. I thought we were just winding up the interview. And Chris suddenly said, and speaking of marathons, what do you say, Rongan? Dr. Rongan Chatterjee in the London Marathon 2020. What do you think? And essentially, he challenged me on air. I think I sort of said yes and said, well, I'm pretty sure I couldn't get a place now anyway. It's not long to go. He goes, no, we've already got your place before the interview. So him and Vassos were looking at me and basically challenged me on air. And I said yes. I don't think I quite realized it at that time that it was only about 12 weeks to go at that time, maybe 12 or 15 weeks. Of course, the April 2021 ended up getting postponed. I know you ran a virtual event last year, but the actual in-person event is happening, I guess, almost 18 months, year and a half after that initial event, which for many reasons for me has worked out quite well. But going back to that initial point, I probably would have said a similar thing or probably thought I can't fit that in. But saying yes has transformed my life, right? Because saying yes has taken me on a journey of self-discovery. I was going to do it in April 2020. Yes, it would have been tough, but I've got together with a phenomenal running coach who said, Ronnie, you can do it. It's going to be tough, but we can get you round. But since I've had longer and I'll be working with her, my body is moving more efficiently than it's ever moved before. I've learned about my mental obstacles that happen when things get tough. I've done tough things in the past, but in a slightly different way. This is sort of showing up other parts of my personality for me. So I actually thought a few months ago, I said to Helen, who's my running coach, I said, Helen, even if this got cancelled, I am running a marathon on Sunday, October the 3rd, 2021. I hope it's in London, but if it ain't, I'm doing it somewhere because I'm ready in my head. It doesn't mean I feel I've done enough training. Let's be really clear. But in my head, I'm like, no, I am completing a marathon in 2021.
Yeah. And I mean, just when you say that bit about doesn't mean you're necessarily ready as a first-time runner. I think that's what everybody feels. I think they get there and it's like the process you've gone through, the training. I mean, you've had, I mean, what is incredible to say is on the day of the marathon, it will be 889 days since the last in-person London marathon for the masses. It's quite incredible. So it's 2.5 years since April 2019 to October 2021. 889 days. I have worked it out because you're looking at me like I've got...
Well, I'm just saying, presumably that's the longest gap ever since it started, right?
Absolutely. Since the 29th of March, the first year, 29th of March, 1981. And then it moved to April in 1982. So there's never been that gap. And I think... that's that journey you've been on in terms of adapting over that time is a journey that so many people will have shared with you, and the ups and downs, the disappointments that we've had through this journey. And then, that's why I really believe that the 3rd of October, I mean, I don't know whether you watched the Olympics and Tokyo 2020 and the emotion that the athletes, when they came off the track, were showing was profound. It was deep. And even though they were competing without any crowd, I think their relief that they had been able at the end of their 4-year or now 5-year cycle, been able to complete their event. I think that's what this is going to be the People's Olympics on the 3rd of October. And that connection that people have with their own emotions and the journey they've been on, I think it's going to be the most memorable London Marathon ever. And wow, we've had some pretty incredible ones in the past.
Well, let's take it back to the start. I believe that the idea for the London Marathon came about when your dad, I think, had a post-run drink in Richmond all the way back in 1978. So tell me about that. What was going on at the time?
Yeah, my dad liked the pub. So in our house, it got called the Station. I've no idea why. He was coming back from the station, but actually he was in the pub. And the running club that he belonged to was called Ranelagh Harriers, and their clubhouse was behind the pub. And he was there one evening, and his club mates came back, and they'd just been to New York. And as you say, it was 1978. And they'd been to New York City, and they had run the New York City Marathon. And they were waxing lyrically about it, saying it was the most amazing thing. My father had to go see what it was like. And I have to say, my father thought, well, that's the worst thing I could possibly think of, running 26.2 miles on the road. He loved the countryside. He loved the mountains. He would go out. He might go out for 3 or 4 hours for a walk, but the thought of doing it on a rock hard pavement was the last thing he thought would be a good thing. But he went there, and he wrote movingly in the Observer in 1979 about that he had an epiphany like Saul on the road to Damascus. My father had been Olympic gold medalist. He had heard the crowd roar at Melbourne in 1956. He'd, as a reporter, which is what he was, he'd been at so many different sports events, the World Cup in 1966, but he said he'd never heard such a roar as the roar of the crowd supporting 20,000 people in then the gun crime capital city of the world, which New York was in 1979. And that feeling, he said he knew that London had the course because John Disley, who co-founded it with my father, said it did. But he said, did London have the heart and have the soul to welcome the world? And again, the 3rd of October, we will show we do, and that Britain does. And it is just, as I say, I can't wait to speak to you a few days afterwards and hear the journey and what you felt it was like.
I mean, hearing you recount that story about your dad and, the passion with which you speak, I almost felt there was tears there, Hugh. What does this event mean to you?
Yeah, a huge amount. I mean, it's his legacy. It's his and John Disley's legacy. I mean, they were incredible people. My father was the pacemaker to Sir Roger Bannister, along with Chris Chataway, and you see a picture of those three people, and they were sort of pantheons of sport, and what they did outside sport was quite incredible. Does it make me emotional? Yes, because the London Marathon has become what I call, and I believe is called, one of the crown jewels of British sport. And if you look at the others, you talk about the FA Cup, you talk about the Grand National, you talk about the boat race, you talk about Wimbledon. Firstly, everyday people can't do that. They're all over 150 years old. The London Marathon is 40 years old. And it's that unique bit where you are starting on the same start line of the gods of the sport. Whether it's the Eliud Kipchoge, whether it is Bridget Kosgei, whether it's David Weir, whether it's Shelley Woods, whether it's Manuela Schall, whoever, these incredible athletes who have been on the same journey as you. And yeah, they might be running an awful lot quicker, but you just don't get that in anything else. And I think how Britain has adopted this, and it will be something like 40% of the watching population will be having the London Marathon on their TVs, which is incredible. That doesn't happen these days with Netflix and Amazon and all these other channels, but people have just adopted it. And it's it's a real honor to be in the position I'm in, and to be inspiring people to take up running, whatever age. I mean, I'm passionate about kids taking up sport and just how it brings communities together and people together.
On the London Marathon website, your vision, your values, your aims are all there. It says one of the aims of the London Marathon is to show humanity that on occasions, society can be united. I found that really interesting, particularly if we think about the state of the world today, which is very, very divided, a lot of polarization. This has been going on for years, even before the past 18 months that was going on. So why is it such a passion through this event that you want to show humanity that society can be united? And also, why in those words did you put to show humanity that on occasion society can be united? Those two words I thought were really interesting. Vivo Barefoot are one of the sponsors of today's show. Now, I am a huge fan of Vivo Barefoot shoes and have been wearing them for over a decade now, well before they started supporting this podcast. I've also been recommending them to patients for years because I've seen so many benefits. I've seen improvements in back pain, hip pain, knee pain, foot pain, and even things like plantar fasciitis. And contrary to what you might initially think, most people find Vivos really, really comfortable. And I have to say, especially at this time of year, as the temperature is starting to drop, their winter boots are absolutely fantastic. And I myself am really enjoying wearing their brand new Gobi warm-lined winter boots. Now, as well as adults, I think they are a fantastic option for children. And I really hope that in the future, more and more children start wearing barefoot shoes like Vivos, as I think this can prevent many downstream problems in the body later on in life. And remember, whether for your children or yourself, if you've never tried Vivos before, it's completely risk-free to do so, as they offer a 100-day trial for new customers. So if you're not happy, you just send them back for a full refund. If you go to vivobarefoot.com/livemore, they are giving 20% off as a one-time code to all of my podcast listeners. Terms and conditions do apply. To get your 20% off code, all you have to do is go to vivobarefoot.com/livemore. Today's bite-sized episode is sponsored by AG1, one of the most nutrient-dense whole food supplements that I've come across, and I myself have been drinking it regularly for over 5 years. It contains vitamins, minerals, probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes, and so much more, and can help with energy, focus, gut health, digestion, and support a healthy immune system. For the month of April only, AG1 are offering a free morning person hat, bottle of vitamin D, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. Just go to drinkag1.com/livemore to unlock this exclusive offer and get started on your journey to better health today.
So as you said, society is divided, and that's wrong. It is just, there is no reason that we should be divided if we start to want to understand where someone else is coming from, where we want to listen to where they're coming from. And the marathon breaks down barriers. 26.2 miles, it's a long way. And everyone on that day, it's what sport does, actually. It's incredible. It's what sport does. You realize that you are united in a purpose. And I go back to kids, and I've got an 8-year-old and 11-year-old, and I found out you have the same. And mine did Junior Park Run on Saturday, and I think you're talking in the same way. And if you can what sport does is it teaches you together you will be better. It teaches you that together with surrounding yourself with great people, you will do great things. But you also can't control everything. And you can't control if someone is going to be better than you. If you go for a job interview, for example, you can't control if the greatest person for a job is going to turn up, but you can control whether you are well prepared for that interview, whether you have done your research, whether you turn up on time, whether you turn up relaxed, whether you turn up having slept, whether you turn up having eaten the right food, whether you turn up on the top of your game. And if someone turns up better than you, heck, you did your best. Some other time, you will come out best. And that does go slightly away from what we've talked about in terms of showing the family of humanity that on occasions it can be together, because the more occasions that we make it happen, the more we break down those barriers, the more that the world will realize that that's what we need to do going forward. And these goals were put in by my father and John Disley.
Same ones, really?
Same ones. So there are a couple of extra ones that we've added, but that is we've slightly changed the words. It was the family of mankind as opposed to humanity. And mankind is not now, it's humankind or humanity. So we've slightly tweaked in terms of the words, but those... And the marathon's done that. If you go to after the Boston bombing tragedy and our event happened 6 days later, and people, we had 30 seconds of silence on the start line to show our togetherness with what was going on in New York at that time. And we will have people from around the world. Not all the countries will be able to join us on the 3rd of October this year, but it's another reason we've put the event back to the 2nd of October 2022. So once again, we can welcome the world. And marathon, we're part of Abbott World Marathon Majors, Berlin, New York, Chicago, Boston, Tokyo. We genuinely want to try and bring the world together. And it sounds a ridiculous statement. It really does.
It doesn't actually, because as you were describing humanity, division, togetherness, I kept going back in my mind to what you said about what's special about this event, that I will be running on the same bit of road as some of the best runners in the world. If Kipchoge didn't have the Olympics this year, I probably would be running on the same pavement as Kipchoge. Yep. And I think that's incredibly powerful, actually, because as you say, with other events, it can feel quite distant. Oh, that's a great spectacle to watch from afar. Oh, wow, I love watching this. But actually, what can be more powerful at bringing people together than actually, existing, running, facing adversity, maybe at times experiencing pain and suffering, but you're doing it on the same roads, on the same pavements, with the same crowds around you. I guess, of course, I haven't experienced it yet myself. I cannot wait to. But in some ways, that shows that we're all the same more than anything else.
Exactly. That is exactly it. And I think you mentioned earlier that your wife, your kids are coming to support, and the conversations they'll get in with other people who are supporting a loved one, or just, those conversations again will bring people together. And I think that the more we are connected with our feelings, the more where we feel something together, that's what creates these incredibly powerful experiences that you just don't get in life generally. And it is what we have missed more than ever in the last 18 months, as we have been segregated, separated. Our kids haven't been educated at school. We haven't been able to meet our friends, yet together we will be bringing people. They're outside, it's safe, and it's going to be the most incredible experience and the feeling I hope you get. And I mean, one of the dangers is if we talk this up and then you come afterwards and you say, oh, shoot, that really wasn't what I expected.
Well, I'm sure it possibly won't be what I expected, but one thing I've learned to do over the past few years, I think, is kind of just be more accepting. It will be what it will be. As you say, and I've heard you say this in other interviews, I saw this really gorgeous conversation you gave, I think, to some colleges in London to try and inspire, I guess, teenagers and people in their early 20s about going on in life. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. You could see the passion and your desire to really help people. But one of the things you spoke about there and you've spoken about already is focus on what you can control. Well, look, I can control how much I train. I can control what I eat before and what I drink before. And I can't control the weather, right? I'd love it to be, not too hot. I'd love it to be like a blue skies and cool breeze behind me, helping me. But, it could be pouring down with rain. And if it does, it does.
Yep.
I can't imagine that would, if I'm honest, in any way change my enjoyment of the events. And I guess even if, I don't know, of course I'm hoping to complete the events. I imagine each year are there people who pull out and they're unable to? Do you know what sort of percentage that is?
Yeah, I mean, one of the slightly bizarre statistics is, so about each year, about 450 people start but don't finish. So about 450 people drop out on the route of about 40,000 people. So you're playing around with about 1%, just over 1%.
And that sounds reasonable to me because it's hard.
Yeah.
Although everyone can do it, I actually do believe that everyone can do it.
Yep.
Actually, something may happen on the day. You might sprain your ankle or an injury might flare up and you might come to the point where actually, you know what? I could go through, but I'm probably going to knacker my knee if I finish this and then not be able to walk for the rest of the year. So, do you know what sort of people drop out and do you know sort of for what reasons they often do?
It is most often it is an injury that they sustain or an illness that they've picked up that they didn't realize. And then as they're going through the day, I mean, we've done a huge amount of work this year for the back of the pack runners. So we've got a party bus at the back. We've got a load of tail walkers, so people who are helping runners. We've got supporters from miles 16 to 24 to walk with people if they are sort of really feeling the effects. So we've done a huge amount to support people on that journey because they've done a huge thing to get to that start line.
That's really exciting. First of all, I'm intrigued as to what goes down on the party bus. But I'm fascinated that as a society, and I'm super aware that you come from a family of high sporting pedigree. Dad, an Olympic gold medalist. I think your mum was a high-level tennis player.
Yeah, she won the French Open, both singles, mixed and doubles.
So, understatement of the year that you come from a high sporting pedigree family. There's obviously a fascination with the elite in society. We like to see how fast people can run. We like to see, who's the best tennis player or who's the best whatever. But it strikes me that talking to you about the London Marathon, talking to my friends who've done it or who aspire to do it at some point, it strikes me that in some ways there should be more focus on the back of the pack because in some ways they're the kind of everyday heroes. They're your neighbors. They're the people who don't have their own coach, their own physio. They don't have infinite time to rest and chill after a long workout. They're the ones who are squeezing that workout in around looking after kids, school run, job, shopping. Is this something that you think has to change across society? Do you think it's something that the London Marathon has had to evolve over the years, this real focus on the back of the pack?
Yeah, I think it's something, I mean, we've had a partnership with the BBC since day one in terms of that's where the marathon has been on TV. And if you think there's coverage pretty well over 6 hours live, yet the elite athletes are taking 2 hours and 30 minutes. So 2 hours for the women and 2 hours 15, 2 hours 20 for, 2 hours 15, 2 hours 20 for the women and just over 2 hours for the men. The elite wheelchairs are about 1 hour 30 and 1 hour 40. So actually you do have more coverage of the everyday stories because those are the ones that actually inspire people. And those are the ones where the marathon really connects with people, going back to on a level. I mean, the gods of the sport, amazing, but that's not us. That's not who we can aspire, many of us, to be. But actually just being the best that we can be. Memorize, doing something in memory of somebody else, helping someone on that journey, helping through fundraising. That's things that we can do that's going to give us a positive life experience. And that's, I think, positivity and being positive in life. That's what it's all about. Go out, enjoy life. And the London Marathon, even though you're on this journey of 26.2 miles, you will feel at the end that you have done something incredibly positive.
What does running a marathon teach someone about life?
What doesn't it teach them about life? So I think, firstly, just one step at a time. We are in society, we tend to fear change. We tend to fear what might happen that is bad, as opposed to actually looking at what might happen that is good. And, I, as you say, come from a sporting background. My passion is actually motorbike racing. That's what I do. And you don't look at the corner. You're always looking through the corner, past the corner, where you want to go. Where you want to go is a safe place. If you're looking at the corner, you're probably looking at the kitty litter, or you're looking at off track, you're going to end up off track. So you've got to look where positively you want to go. And so I think that what the marathon teaches you is, firstly, one step at a time. It's a long journey. And there's a Chinese proverb, and I'm not going to get it right, but just something like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Yeah.
And that's what the marathon can teach you. It can teach you also, surround yourself, get information. You've got a coach.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, where did you find your coach from? Where did you get your coach from?
So, look, I'm incredibly lucky. And I want to acknowledge that not everyone has got the resources to have a running coach and the time to put into that. But the honest truth is, what happened is, after I came out of the radio studio and got into the taxi with Gareth, who's here, who's videoing the conversation at the moment, I was like, what have I just done? I've just said yes to do a marathon. I can't run more than 2K at the moment without my hammy going, and it's in April. I was like, well, it's in April. That's not long to go at all. So I got on, I had work to do, so I had to put it out of my mind, get on with the job. And then I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? I've said I'm going to do it. I would like to do it. And I called up a chap called Gary Ward, who's been on the show before. Gary is the guy who I really put down to someone who helped me pretty much get rid of my back pain. I had 10 years of chronic back pain in my 20s. I was trying everything, physios, doctors, basically all kinds of treatments. Things would help for a bit, but I would never get to the root cause of the problem. And I knew, people say, oh, wrong, and you're tall. It's just the way it is. I thought, I just do not believe that just by being tall means I have to put up with debilitating back pain for the rest of my life. And I've always been very inquisitive and curious. And I found this guy, Gary, who was incredible. I went on one of his courses. I think was the first doctor to study his methods. And in a nutshell, he said, Rongan, your right foot is not working properly. If we can get that, moving more efficiently, I think that will help your back. And literally 5 minutes of foot exercises a day, and my back was like 70, 80% better.
Yep.
So what's that got to do with the marathon story? I phoned up Gary. I said, listen, mate, you got to help me. I am meant to be doing this in a few weeks. He said, all right, come and see me. Well, let's see what we can do. Went to see Gary, and he said, he left me a voice message a few days after, and he said, Rongan, I know, especially over the past few years since you've been on telly and with the podcast, you have got an incredible black book of people to call. But I'm telling you, speak to Helen Hall. She's unbelievable. So I went down to see Helen with Gary. And that was last January 2020. Helen is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. Not only is she got a way of looking at the entire human body that's just incredible. And I've seen a lot of great coaches in my life. She is definitely in the top drawer of anyone I've come across. Wow. She's getting my body moving more efficiently. And as I said, the marathon for me has been a journey because I've been seeing her and talking to her regularly. She's now become one of my closest friends. And together, she's helped me. There's many things she's taught me, if I'm honest. One of the things that she's really helped me see is that your training has to fit around your life. And for me, and I really want to sort of get this message out there to people where possible, that, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because the marathon's a long way. So, most people would think it requires a huge amount of training, a lot of time out. I have to find this time from somewhere. A lot of people are still training even when they're already knackered. And I actually think there's another way, because when I say I haven't trained as much as I would have liked to, it's been a busy year for a variety of reasons. Things have come up in work. My mum, who's, she turned 81 a couple of weeks ago. She's not really well. She's been falling a lot. My brother and I help care for her. And Helen's helped me realize that, Rongan, look, you can only train as much as you can train. You can't fabricate time out of thin air. And she's helping me realize that you can actually train for a marathon and also be kind to yourself. And I'm not sure that's the common narrative. I think the common narrative is you have to punish yourself. Even if you're exhausted, you have to still get those trainers on and go and push yourself.
I totally agree with you. In a simple phrase, in a simple answer, you do not need to punish yourself. And actually, that's not a positive thing to do. So you need to start recognizing when you're tired and adapt your training. Or not go training and then do it the next day. On the journey that people, the hardest bit, that you got the first step, but if you've not run before, it's those first 6 or 7 weeks. That's the hardest bit. Yeah. Once you've got through those first 6 or 7 weeks, you're actually getting endorphins. You're getting a natural high from the fact that you're running, and you're going to want to do it. And actually, sometimes it can become compulsive, and you've got to try and dampen that down. Do it because it feels good. Going back to my father in 1981, he used to write an article in The Observer. There was the Brayshaw way and there was the Hanscom way. And the Hanscom way was like run miles and miles and miles. And my dad's way was much more go into the mountains, have a bit of fun, do it sort of more infrequently, do it with a pint of beer. And it'd have different people following on which way was better. And in the end, it's about the individual. It's about what works for you.
I think that's the key point. What works for you? So this journey of self-discovery for me was really trying to figure out, why am I actually doing this? Am I doing it because I said yes? I don't think I am. I think the old Rongan, the younger, the less secure Rongan of 5-10 years ago would have definitely done it because I said yes. And I remember when I posted about it on social media that day or the day after, we posted the video of Chris asking me. And a lot of my followers said, Rongan, don't do it just because I said yes. You should talk to your wife. It's going to be a huge amount of training, a lot of time out of your family, all this kind of stuff. And it was amazing to see their concern. But it hasn't really been like that. Like, the truth is, and I wonder what your view on this is, especially because you come from a competitive family. Well, I assume a competitive family from the achievements of your mum and dad's. I think my identity used to come from external achievements. So, if I did this, it would help support my self-worth. It would make me feel artificially good. Mm-hmm. So in the past, if I said yes, I was going to, come hell or high water, I would have done that event and completed it, even if it broke me. Right. But the Rongan of 2021, I would like to think is very different. If I honestly thought that doing that event would break me or give me a knee injury, I would have pulled out. I would have said, hey, you know what? I said yes, but you know what? Genuinely, I can't fit it into my life. Because I've had longer, I've realized, and Helen has been hugely influential on me throughout this journey, that you don't have to beat yourself up. She said, very much similar to you, she says, what humans are good at is putting one foot after the other. Humans can always keep going. It's what we do best. And whenever I struggle, I always think about it. And she says, Rongan, if the distance is long enough, you will come out of your funk. Walk. You may not feel good. Just walk for a bit and you will come out the other side. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm done now, just walk and you'll probably find you feel different. So I guess I'm getting quite emotional thinking about this, but I have been on this process of really understanding my body better over the past 18 months. I feel what I've learned with Helen and on this journey to do the marathon, it's going to help me in every aspect of my life. It's going to help me walk better. If I play golf, I'm going to golf better. It's going to help me have more mobility in all my joints. So actually for me, a week on Sunday, in some ways, it's the culmination of all that self-discovery, but it doesn't stop there, right? It doesn't stop there. It's not as if that's the end destination for me. No, I'm not going to suddenly stop running a week on Sunday and go, oh, cool, that's done now. Let me get back to my life now. I'm already thinking about the marathon the year after. If I'm honest, I'm already thinking, oh, what about the London Marathon next year? What about ultras? I'm already starting to think beyond it. And I want to ask you, Hugh, because last year was obviously a very difficult year. You had to cancel the event. I remember in the summer, July, August time, I remember there was quite a lot of animosity on Twitter saying, you got to let us know. We got to know, am I to keep training? Do I stop? What was that like for you and your team when you were getting that animosity? Because I imagine behind the scenes, it was very, very hard to know, could you put this event on? But then also, what does that teach us? I understand people want to know, but if we're really focusing on this as a process, a journey rather than a destination, in some ways you could argue it doesn't matter whether the event is happening or not. Do you know what I'm getting at? Of course it matters, but do some of us get too entrapped in thinking of course it's a great event, but I don't think it's just about the event. It's what it teaches you along the way and beyond.
And look, you've said a lot of pretty profound things there. And, how did it feel when we were getting the criticism, just tell us what's going on? It felt difficult. But we had knowledge that we were trying to do the right thing and that we were doing the right thing, that we were working with London authorities. I mean, putting the London Marathon on, it's going through 5 London boroughs plus the city. It's in the Royal Parks. You've got the BBC, you've got the Mayor's Office, you've got Transport for London. You've got a myriad of different private landowners, be it Canary Wharf, Tower Hotel. You've got so many different people that you are speaking to who help you and who need to be allowing you for that marathon to go on. And so we were trying to give people as much information that we could. And we were dealing with so many different scenarios that we had planned. And yes, it didn't happen. But I agree with you. It's about, you can, as an individual, you can focus on, well, it's just about that one day. And I agree with you, it shouldn't be about that one day. That one day is going to be incredible. But life should never be about one day. Life should be about every day. It should be about the journey. It should be about, one of the things I want to ask you, how do your kids now feel? It's coming up with 12 days to go. What are they saying to you? Dad, what's happening? What are they saying?
Ever have one of those days when everything seems to go wrong, and before you know it, you've slipped back into those habits you're trying so hard to avoid, like sugar, doom scrolling, and wine? When it comes to making changes in our lives that actually last, most people think the solution is to try harder, but this is simply not the case. In my new book, Make Change That Lasts, I reveal how exactly you can break free from the habits that hold you back. What many of us don't realize is that our behaviors follow our beliefs. So when you change your beliefs, and my book will show you how to do that, you'll spend less time having to think about your habits because they'll happen automatically. Make Change That Lasts, the #1 Sunday Times bestseller, is available to buy now all over the world as a paperback, ebook, and as an audiobook, which I am narrating. And if you've not got your copy yet, what are you waiting for? Ever have one of those days when everything seems to go wrong, and before you know it, you've slipped back into those habits you're trying so hard to avoid, like sugar, doom scrolling, and wine? When it comes to making changes in our lives that actually last, most people think the solution is to try harder, but this is simply not the case. In my new book, Make Change That Lasts, I reveal how exactly you can break free from the habits that hold you back. What many of us don't realize is that our behaviors follow our beliefs. So when you change your beliefs, and my book will show you how to do that, you'll spend less time having to think about your habits because they'll happen automatically. Make Change That Lasts, the #1 Sunday Times bestseller, is available to buy now all over the world as a paperback, ebook, and as an audiobook, which I am narrating. And if you've not got your copy yet, what are you waiting for?
I mean, they're excited. They can't wait. They want to come down. They want to watch. I said, Daddy, will we be able to see you? You know, you're pretty tall. I'm like, okay, kids, you know, I'm tall, but there's going to be a lot of people around. I don't know. They're just really excited. And
can I just say that's part of this wider sort of sphere, that what you're doing and what you're doing, talking about it here with, you know, you've already said 650,000 people listening every week. And the journey that you're going on and what's happened and the ups and downs of it, but actually the process, and, you know, you're inspiring your kids, you're inspiring people listening to this. That's just the most incredible thing to be doing. And hopefully that again fills your heart with just incredible joy.
yeah, it does. You know, seeing the excitement on the kids' faces, I know that will matter. You know, if, as people say, at some point in the race, when your mind is saying, you should stop, you can't go on. Yes, I'll draw my internal resources. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this marathon, Hughes. You could probably tell, and I guess a lot of it's coming out at the moment because you're here. But I'm going to finish that marathon.
I can see that. I can see that in your head. I can see it as you. I can see your imagining.
I'm not going to finish it at the expense of everything else. If something happened that I thought I was going to, you know, bust my knee if I continue, okay, I'm not going to be stupid. I will, you know, pull myself off the course and go, okay, it wasn't meant to be this year.
Yep.
But what's really helped me, and I did an Instagram post on this, which people really liked about a week and a half ago, and maybe we can talk about it, is I've got clear on my goals. Not other people's goals, not the newspaper's goals, not what people write about in running magazines' goals. That's all fine. But I realized they weren't my goals. And I've done a bit of self-inquiry as to what do I want out of the marathon. So I've got 4 goals in my head, which are unique and personal to me. It doesn't mean no one else can have them. Yep. It just means these are my goals. I want to do it mostly nasal breathing, because I've been studying a lot on nasal breathing. I've spoken about it a lot on the show. I know what it does to our body physiologically. It will keep me in the aerobic zone. There's all kinds of reasons. So I'm going to see if I can do that. I want to finish with a smile on my face, which I'm sure, I hope everyone can do or aspires to do. I want to do it in my Vivo Barefoot Minimalist shoes because I've been wearing barefoot shoes for 8, maybe even 9 years now.
Right.
I really like feeling connected to the ground. I'm not advocating people go and suddenly do that, just to be really clear. I've been wearing these kinds of shoes for a long time. Yes, it means I don't have any cushioning, but I've been learning to run this way. So for me, that's something I want to do. And the fourth thing is I didn't want the training to not allow me to do my job that I love or spend time with my family the way I want to. And it really hasn't. And that's what I'm really, really proud of. It's not got in the way of my work. I'm not saying everyone can do that. I've just been I think I've trained smart. And again, I will give huge homage to my coach for helping me. I think she goes, "Wrong, and look, I wouldn't run this week. You've got too much on. Your bucket's full. Yep. You're going to put more strain on your body." So I feel, I don't know if I'll manage to meet all those 4 goals. I'd like to think I'll finish with a smile on my face, even if I'm crying inside. Yeah. I'm sure I can, put on a smile for the ends. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make here is that people ask you, what time are you going for? And this has been really hard for me because I've always been really competitive and I don't think it came from a good place in the past. If I look at those 4 goals, which one of those 4 have got a time at the end of it?
None.
So this has been a real struggle with me because part of me wants to look at the time, but part of me is also going, wrong. And that's a narrative you've grown up with since you were a kid, that your time matters, that it's important. It says something about who you are. But I come to the realization a few months ago, my wife and my kids do not care one jot if I do that marathon in 2.5 hours or 6.5 hours. They will not love me even 1% less.
Yep.
It doesn't change my ability to do my job the day after.
Yep.
And I think why I'm so passionate about getting this message out there, Hugh, is because I really so strongly feel that many of us walk around and we absorb other people's goals and we think they're ours, but they're not. And therefore, we're trying to live up to something that's not ours. You can't compare yourself to Eliud Kipchoge. He's one of the most talented athletes probably ever to walk the earth, but he's a professional athlete. He can run. He can get coaching. He can rest when he needs to rest, right? And I feel, what do you think about a focus on times? Because I'm not saying it's always wrong, because for some people, it's a great motivational tool for them. But when you look at that time, let's say 4 hours, 4:30, 5 hours, it doesn't tell you anything else about that person's life. Was that person running a marathon in 5 hours and they were single and they were in really good health and they had nothing else to do apart from work and train? Or were they a single mum working 2 jobs, also caring for a relative, and actually just getting on that start line was one of the most incredible things they've ever done? It doesn't tell that story. And that's why I'm so keen to try and get this message out, that you can do it, but do it your way.
And look, I think that's just such a great life lesson, which is we do absorb so much pressure from external and have to live up to, you talked about my father and my mother. Do I have to live up to that? Or people, what their friends have said that they should do or what somebody else did? No, I mean, that's the great thing about the marathon being such a leveler. And, just have that inner strength, have that belief in yourself, and that, you can, as your coach has said, finish it. And by the way, anyone can have a coach by joining a running club. So in reality, that accessibility might not be as good as your coach, but they absolutely can do that. So they can go on the internet, they can research stuff. So I'm not criticizing people for trying to run a time. I'm just going, there's enough pressure on society, full stop, for us at the moment. just ridiculous amounts at the moment. So it's one of the reasons in terms of the virtual event that we did in 2020 and the fact that it is incredible. There'll be 40,000 people on the road from Greenwich to Westminster, but there'll be another 40,000 doing the 26.2 miles in their community, doing the virtual event their way in 23 hours. They've got 23 hours, 59 minutes and 59 seconds to do it in. And that, again, for me, just makes the marathon even more powerful, even more helpful, even more inspirational. And it just takes away the pressure for so many people where they've got crowds. Some people get agoraphobia. They don't want to, or claustrophobia. There are too many people around them for whatever reason, but they could do it their way. And I love the fact that we are together we run is what we're doing, both virtually and on the event on the day from Greenwich to Westminster.
One of the most incredible things, I think, for people watching the London Marathon is the variety of people taking part, the different shapes, the different ages, the different sizes. And I think that's what's incredibly special about the event. We're going to put this podcast out just a few days before the ballot opens for 2022. So, Hugh, for people who are thinking, all right, I'm thinking about it, I hear what you guys are saying, but are still not sure whether they should put their names down in that ballot, what would you say to them?
Just do it. It's as simple as that. I think it's the first step, going back to what we talked about, the first step. If you take that first step and put your name in, you might get a place. And if you do get a place, then you've got to go, now I've got, people will find out at the end of January, beginning of February 2022. What a great way. You've then got another 9 months with which to ease yourself in to the fact you're then going to be running that 26.2 miles in October. So, and that's a journey that you'll go on. And as you say, it does not have to be pressurized. It can be that you're going to start walking a mile. That's what you're going to do. That's your first thing that you're going to try and do, is walk a mile or walk half a mile. But it's that, we know that if you have an event at the end, if you've set yourself a target to complete it, not in a time, just to complete it, then you are much more likely to do it and then try and find somebody else. I mean, Chris Evans got you involved. And that's what I love. Chris is just so enthusiastic, him and Vassos, and how many people they're getting involved to get that realization that it is accessible if you put your mind to it.
It's about comfort zones, isn't it? It's about putting yourself outside that comfort zone to see what happens.
Yep.
And, speaking as someone who feels incredibly grateful to have a place, because my cousin got a place in 2018. He's not got in on the ballot since. He's just each year waiting to see. He wants to experience that again. And I know how lucky and fortunate I have been to be given a place, so I do not take that for granted. But I'm so glad Chris and Vassos challenged me, because had she not, I would not have been on this voyage of self-discovery. But I had to say yes. I had to have that date on the calendar, and then I had to learn around it. And I think that's the power, isn't it? Put your name in the ballot. You may not get it, but if you do, then suddenly you've got to ask yourself a few questions.
Yeah. And I mean, you probably, in terms of, I know you talk about this a lot in terms of the importance of sleep, the importance of the right food and nutrition. But again, these are all things that on the journey you're on, you'll sort of realize, because you'll feel the difference when you're running. You'll feel the difference in your legs and your muscles. And it is then just about looking after yourself holistically. And you will end up in a much healthier place, I believe, at the end of that journey.
You have something called the Spirit of London Marathon Awards. And I'm interested as to what they are and what are some of your most memorable stories from the marathon.
Yeah, I think, we've talked a lot about the feeling of running that 26.2 miles, and the spirit of the London Marathon is about people that have really shown that feeling, have done something that has connected with the world, with Britain. And, it really is just incredible, just some of those stories where people have, their story has blown up. So an example would be in 2017, I think it was, the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry talked about, the marathon became the mental health marathon. It was, they took 12 people with mental health issues, and they were followed on a TV program on this journey that they went on. And there was one particular woman who, her story was just quite incredible. She had lost her baby aged 1, and 5 days later, her husband had then committed suicide. And she unbelievably felt she wasn't worthy of anyone's love. She didn't feel connected to the world. And the journey that she went on in terms of building up her confidence through running that 26.2 miles, the story that got told was quite incredible. And that is Rhiannon Burke. That story that was shown on TV, and the spirit that she showed the true spirit of the London Marathon. I feel incredibly proud that the London Marathon was the end vehicle for that campaign of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry about mental health, something that we as a society didn't talk about. It was very easy to understand if someone had a physical health issue, you've got a broken arm or you're limping or you've got a bandage, but to understand mental health and how they have changed society in that way, and that the marathon was part of it. And this, the spirit of the London Marathon is about that. It's about, just the first winners. If you go to Dick Beardsley and Inga Simonsen, who, these were the elite runners, and they finished that first London Marathon hand in hand. And talk about setting the marathon off in a way that you couldn't possibly have written. If someone had said that these runners, the best runners in the world, are going to duke it out over the roads of London and then finish hand in hand. But there are just incredible stories every year. And the spirit of the London Marathon is where people are brought together. Whether it's Michael Watson, who the boxer, and he did it in 8 days. I think it was in 2003, the same year that Paula Radcliffe broke the world record.
Yeah.
There are just these stories. It's worth your listeners just looking them up, because they're moving stories, and they are the reasons that people ran and the journey that they went on. And I believe that the marathon for each one of them has helped them on that journey.
It's incredible to hear these stories, these individual stories. I guess there's going to be 40,000 stories each year, right? Because each individual, whether it's their first marathon or their 20th marathon, there's something about that distance, I'm sure, that teaches you something new every time. Because each day is different. You will have slept differently coming up to it. You will have eaten differently. Your life circumstances will be different. And therefore, the you that shows up will also be slightly different each time. And so it's incredible to hear that. And as you were saying that, it made me think that when your father thought about the event, co-founded this event in the late 1970s or early 1980s, a long time ago, mental health would not have been on anyone's agenda, whether it's for a physical activity race, whether it's in society. I guess back then, the view would have been a marathon is about physical health, whereas these days we're discovering that arguably more important than that is its effects on our mental health.
Yeah. I mean, I think, that you absolutely, that, they absolutely never thought about it in 1981. My father died in 2003. They certainly weren't even thinking about it in 2001. So that really, as I said, only happened from 2017. But also, I don't think that we have gone through £1 billion having been raised by the runners for good causes, having run the London Marathon. £1 billion. And I don't think he and John, John died a lot later than my father. But John knew that we were getting to the billion, and he was immensely proud of it. But my father would never have thought of that was possible. So I think it's just grown in this incredible way that the community has, Britain and the world has helped it to grow.
It's an incredible statistic to think that this event has raised more than £1 billion. That really answers one of my first questions, which is why should we care about the London Marathon? Why does it matter more than just those 40,000 people who are on their own, journeys on that particular day? And I think that's quite clearly there, shows the societal relevance. But what happened there? Because there was no there was no thought towards mental health when it first started. There was no thought, from what I understand, to charity when it first started. So what happened? At what point did the London Marathon start to become associated with charities? Was it from the crowd? Was it an individual? Or was it from the organisation itself?
So it actually came about because trying to get businesses to enter the London Marathon. And so there were some bonds created by Dave Bedford, who was a previous race director. And they were bonds for businesses to get guaranteed places. And for whatever reason, businesses didn't decide that was the right thing that they wanted to do, but charities did. And they I think amplified something that, again, is just a uniquely British thing, which is sort of the fancy dress piece. You might be smiling. I'm really hoping you are smiling as you come down that finish tray, but be very careful. Do have a quick look around about who else is around you, because one of my favorite memories, I think, was I think it was Andrew Strauss running the London Marathon, and a full gorilla out sprinted him down the finish line. This guy dressed in a full gorilla suit. And this is why it's such a leveler. It's like, one of the greatest cricketers in the world. And then this guy obviously was absolutely all out. I think Andrew was just sort of sauntering to the finish line. This gorilla comes shooting past him. So his finish photo was probably Andrew Strauss with a gorilla next to him. So I think there have been so many things that have happened, like when we talk about the marathon. It's like the fact that we believe that we'll have something like 80,000 people around the world, both in their own communities and on those roads from Greenwich to Westminster doing it. That's an incredible thing that we could not have imagined in 2019, that's what we'd be saying is happening the next time the full London Marathon happens 889 days later. We would not have imagined it. So I think what we've been quite good, the team has been great at doing, is developing, listening, and developing the event. And it is the most popular marathon on the planet. 450,000 people applied in 2019 for the 2020 event.
How many applied?
It was actually 456,000 people applied in 6 days to do it.
To do the
2020 actual London Marathon, the one that didn't actually happen.
So nearly 500,000 people applied for 40,000 places.
Yes.
How many applied for this year?
Similar
amounts?
It wasn't as many because we didn't have in 2020, we didn't have, people doing the actual in-person event. And I think it's that bit where you get the connection, the humankind coming together, where, that's what it inspires people so much.
What do you do about that as an organization? Because as awareness keeps growing year on year, as people, I guess the learnings of the past 2 years or so, we've all learnt things about ourselves, about what makes us tick? What do we miss when society shuts down? You know, what are the things we truly value in life? And if more and more people think, yeah, I want to come together as a community, I want to be on those iconic London streets, putting one foot in front of the other, you're already struggling to meet demand with nearly 500,000 people applying. So what happens as more and more people enter that ballot? There's going to be more and more disappointed people.
And look, it is it's both a great position to be in, but a difficult position to be in. And I think, you know, we do say there are other marathons other than London. And there are some great other ones in the UK in terms of the Manchester Marathon, the Brighton Marathon, Edinburgh Marathon. And it isn't just about marathons. It is just about, you know, you've talked about Park Run.
Yeah.
And Paul.
Well, I see a lot of similar. As you talk about the marathon, you talk about, you know, the back of the pack, the bus there, the tail walkers. I've heard you talk about volunteers before, which we'll maybe get onto next. I'm hearing a lot of similarities to Parkrun.
I mean, yes, I don't know whether you've had Paul Sinton-Hewitt and interviewed him, who founded Parkrun.
I've not had Paul yet. I've had Nick, the CEO of Parkrun,
Nick
on.
Pearson.
Yeah,
excellent.
Which was great.
Yeah. So,
and still, I remember one of the most impactful things he said to me on that podcast was Parkrun is a social intervention masquerading as a running event.
Yep.
Or something to that effect.
Yep.
And that has stayed with me.
Yep. And, you know, I'm proud of the journey. I was a director of Parkrun in its early stages.
Right.
And
before you took the job in the marathon?
Yes. Before I took the job at the marathon. I started one on Christmas Day in about 2007 or something. So it's the Bushy Park. And then I think there were maybe 3 at the time. There was Bushy Park, Wimbledon, and one other. And I do remember saying that this will be seen as even more important than the London Marathon. And that's a pretty bold statement to make, especially in the position that I'm in, but it is that community. It is the fact that they are going on every day in communities around now the world. What Paul has done, what Nick is doing, what Tom Williams is doing, what that team is doing, is quite incredible to get people on that journey, those first footsteps. And it is, you know, it's like, you talk about the back of the pack. When we had our back of the pack issue, which is we let down the runners at the back. And those are the runners that we're actually trying. Those are the people who are participating that we're trying to inspire. The people that this is not normal to do 26.2 miles. So how can we genuinely create an amazing atmosphere for them? And that's what we're hoping to do with the party bus, with the tail walkers. But yeah, Parkrun is quite incredible. And I just think that we link together in a lovely way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's for me, it's not about which is the most impactful. I think they're both doing incredible things in their own way. You know, Parkrun has been transformative in my own family life. You know, it's something we've certainly used to at least collectively do at the weekends together. I know as a doctor, I've got many patients whose lives have been transformed by Parkrun, not only those who want to run it. I've got many case studies that I think about in my head now of people who I encouraged to go and volunteer.
Yeah.
And the volunteering was transformative for their mental health.
Yep.
How important are volunteers to, I guess, all sporting events, but in particular, the marathon?
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, they couldn't happen without volunteers. We will have about 4,500 volunteers.
Wow.
Around the route. And again, people come back year on year. It is quite incredible because, as you say, the benefit that you can get, how you're helping other people, the benefit you get just by giving your time and your positivity to helping someone just direct them in one place, or helping them on the route, giving them jelly babies. I mean, that's probably one thing depending how your nutrition strategy goes on the day. You might well be. I always remember one year, and I really hadn't done the training, and I knew it wasn't going to go very well. And basically from the last 6 miles, I was stopping and eating jelly babies, crisps, cheese sandwiches, you name it, anything. I was just shoving in my face because I'd hit the wall. And, but yeah, the volunteers are the lifeblood of the event. And as you say, whether it's, that happens in, London 2012 and the Olympics, our volunteers, were just absolutely incredible. And that's what made the Olympics so much, was the volunteers, the crowd. It's these people. It's not, yeah, you're incredible running on the one of 40,000, but it's that you're bringing other people together to experience that incredible high. That's what makes it such an amazing day.
You get runners who come year on year. I know there's some stories. I think is it 11 people who've done every single one? The last time, in part of my research for this conversation, I was like, 11 people, every single one. That's incredible. Do you get volunteers who keep coming back each year and want to volunteer at every event? Or is it kind of fresh, new blood every year? Or are there some sort of stalwarts who are always there and it's part of who they are?
It is actually both. And one of the big things that we're also trying to do is make the marathon more diverse. Bring more communities into it. You spoke earlier about a single mum who's holding down 2 jobs and who's got a couple of kids, and she's managing to do the marathon. Those are incredible stories, and we need to make more of them.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the stories, I think, that for those people who go, oh, rather you than me, mates, why would I do a marathon? I ain't got time for that. I think those are the stories that will inspire more and more people, I guess, from more and more diverse backgrounds as well. What's that like for the marathon? Do you have a flavour of, obviously London is an incredibly diverse city. Running, I think in the past might have been seen by some, which is quite ironic given if we look at who's dominating, running, whether it's sprinting or long distance running in the world in terms of which countries they come from. But many people, I guess, in the past might have thought of it as more of a white middle class sport, running. Yeah. Is that something that the marathon had to contend with? Is that something you've actively had to go and go, no, we need to get more diversity? Or is that something you've always managed to attract?
So mass participation sports events, you're absolutely right, generally are middle class and more white. And do we need to do something about it? Yes. And that actually is one of the huge things that we're trying to change at the moment. How can you genuinely make a sport that is incredibly accessible in the sense that you can do it from your front door? Most people own a pair of trainers. Most people own a T-shirt. So actually you can go out in a T-shirt, pair of leggings, running shoes. But how can you genuinely, going back to that single parent, if they're looking after the kids, who else is going to look after the kids? How can you really make it something that truly becomes accessible to the whole of society? And we're on a journey at the moment, and we have some great members of the team who are going out into different communities. And this goes across, it's not just running, it is cycling, it is swimming. We just put on last weekend, we had an event called Swim Serpentine. Linford Christie has just learnt to swim. And there he was. We had Linford Christie, we had Minnie Driver. You couldn't get two amazing celebrities, but, Minnie was used to swimming. She swims in the Pacific, she was saying, but Linford's just learned. And there he was, 1992 Olympic gold medalist, having just learned to swim in the Serpentine. So we need to do that for the London Marathon, and there's a lot of work that we're doing going out into communities to change the circumstances that exist at the moment.
It's interesting. You said earlier on something like what you see is so important. That idea that what you see in front of you sort of in many ways defines what you think is possible. Yes. I know as a parent, it's something I'm very aware of.
Yeah.
Particularly when I think about my kids and the opportunities they're being exposed to, comparing it to my own upbringing. And then you think about diversity and, yes, my dad was a doctor. So there was a certain privileges afforded through that. But we're an immigrant family to the UK. And if I think about my upbringing, one of the reasons I'm so drawn to nature now is because nature didn't play a part of my childhood. Mum and dad came from India here to give their family a better life. It was about do well at school. That's how you get ahead. That's how you get a secure job and you can look after your family. There was no talk about getting out of nature to relax and for your mental health. There was no talk of going for a run at the weekend, or, I didn't see my mum and dad go running or putting their running gear on. So it sounds so almost trivial, almost trite saying it like this, but it just didn't really feature for me. So in some ways, you don't feel those events are for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't see it around you.
Exactly.
And if I compare that to my kids, of course, they're seeing us do parkrun. They're going to see daddy do a marathon.
Yep.
And so hopefully their idea of what's normal is going to be completely different. So you say your team's working on this. Is it working? Are things changing? Do you know any of these diversity splits at all?
Yeah, I do. I do know an awful lot of statistics on it. And London is a most incredible city in terms of diversity, which is 40%. And this is the last census, 2011. The new census for 2021 hasn't come out. London had about a 41% ethnic community diversity. In terms of the London Marathon, where do we sit at the moment? Around about 10%. Now, that's wrong. So what are we doing? We started an event called the Vitality Big Half. And that is actually, it has real targets in terms of community entries, going into running crews, going into different groups and inspiring activity. Because going back to this bit, if you do not see it, you do not believe it. And, I know I come from unbelievable privilege, right? Unbelievable privilege. And what actually motivates me is to take that privilege and do something positive with it. And that's what the London Marathon can do. I had an incredible meeting last week with a school, Art Global Academy in Southwark, and the teachers there, the commitment that they had to the kids who in lockdown, so few of them had computers to be able to have online learning. Well, they didn't have a table where they lived, right? The only table they had is the desk at the school. And they were recounting to me the trauma of the mental health that is now happening for school kids that had no issues before from the last 18 months, whereas the ones that had issue, it's become off the scale. And yet, through sport, through activity, through helping people to control some part of their life through sport, if we can make it accessible, it will help. And we have to change society and make it more equal. And we have to change the London Marathon to be more inclusive.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And if there's anything at all I can do to help with that.
You doing it is helping. I mean, your heritage, as you said, you're a tall man. I don't know how tall you are. I'm going to guess about 6'4".
6'6.5".
6'6.5". Wow.
Not the typical marathon runner's height.
Not the typical, no, absolutely not. Yes, that's definitely not. I think they say the ideal marathon runner's height is about a foot smaller than you for the ideal marathon runner. And again, I think this is about partnerships. How can we genuinely break down these barriers? And, go back to what the London Marathon was in 1981. Less than 5% of the finishers were women. Now it's 45%. It will soon be 50%. It has a power to help change society. And we need to use that privilege to kickstart a really important part of, again, bringing humanity together.
One of the things that impressed me most about you, Hugh, when researching this conversation was your passion, but also your incredible, I think, honesty and humility. Because you say, yeah, you may have had a privileged start in life, but you're also very open about where the marathon currently is and where you want it to get to. And I really admire and respect that, because it'd be easy to, I think, to hide from that and not be so open about that. But I think it's really powerful because, nothing's is born perfect. Everything requires work. On a human level, no change ever occurs until there's awareness. We need to be honest, we need to have self-awareness, and only then can we take the steps to actually make change. And it's no different from an organization like yours, that without the honesty and self-awareness, there's no way you can change and make it more diverse. But what would your dream be, I guess? We're, in 2021 now. Let's fast forward to 2030. What would you like to see for the London Marathon at the end of the decade?
Look, it's a great question. And I'm very sort of data focused, and so what do I want to see by 2030? So I have, and this is what the team. So firstly, a vision for a kids event the day before the marathon, with 50,000 school kids running the last 2.6 miles of the marathon, where every school kid is getting paid for coming to the marathon. So, and that money is going towards computers or sports equipment for their schools. And that these schools so kids are being rewarded for running that 2.6. They're not having to pay anything. They're actually getting rewarded for doing it. And I want to see that the marathon has helped this happen in cities around Great Britain, and that the London Marathon, we already as a team have an incredible head of schools, a guy called Ben Cooper, who is trying to get the Daily Mile in London schools. And I believe we should be getting that happening in every school in Britain, that our kids are having that 15 minutes of exercise every single day. And, you take your kids to park run. I take my kids to park run. But again, that's a privilege that we have and we are able to do. We need to get, there's some terrible statistics. 1 in 10 of our school kids go into primary school obese. 1 in 5 come out obese. So whatever's going on with the education system, whatever is going on with the health of our nation, we are walking into a time bomb of ill health, of bad mental health, of bad physical health. And if we can together, and thank you for saying you would like to help us on this journey, because I will come back to that, I promise you. We can together, if we really work, we need to get government to start going, it is not acceptable. That's how society has allowed to happen. We need to make some positive change. And what do I want to see? A London Marathon that truly represents London's amazing, or Britain's amazing diversity, because it is not just about London. It really isn't. This is Britain's marathon. It is the world's marathon, but we need to really inspire all communities to get involved.
It's pretty inspiring thinking about that. And I guess by articulating it and by putting it out there, it opens up the possibility for actually that to happen. I mean, I'm an optimist, although it's hard sometimes to maintain that optimism. I would like to think that is possible when you have a good team, a great desire, a great focus, a great goal, like a clear goal, what you're aiming for. Just to sort of go into a slightly different area, one thing that's fascinating for me is that the Brazier family, yourself and your dad, have been involved with two of the most important athletic feats in human history. So Roger Bannister running the 4-minute mile, showing people for the very first time that a human being can complete a mile in under 4 minutes. Your dad was one of the pacers. And you have been involved as well, haven't you? I think with your team in Eliud Kipchoge's successful attempt to break 2 hours. So talk to me a little bit about that. What can we learn from you Roger Bannisters, from your Eliud Kipchoge's, who are smashing through previously thought limits on human potential?
Oh, I think we can learn an enormous amount from each of them in different ways. And I mean, yes, we're talking about running, but I mean, just bring in Emma Raducanu and what she did in the US Open with such joy on her face and such positivity, and sort of this bit where Eliud talked about no human is limited. And that's what when you go back to Roger Bannister, it was deemed to be physiologically impossible for someone to run under 4 minutes for a mile for 9 years between 1945 to 1954. It had been, that's 10 years. So 1946 to 1954, it had been deemed physiologically impossible to run under 4 minutes for a mile. And there he was training as a doctor. Now, so he was training as a junior doctor, and you will know firsthand how difficult that is. And he goes out and does something that is said to be physiologically impossible. And it goes back to, he managed to fit that in. And what did he do? He had a great coach. He surrounded himself with other people, Chris Chataway, and my dad. And my dad, that probably inspired him to become a gold medalist. Chris Chataway was a world record holder. He, in 1950, bizarrely, actually, he was the first sports personality of the year, Chris Chataway. In the year that Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile record, broke 4 minutes for the mile. Chris Chataway, because he beat a runner called Vladimir Kutz at White City Stadium, 100,000 people watching and live on TV, whereas Roger, no one saw it on TV, and it was about 8,000 people at a track. But I digress. It was, I think Roger just showed what you can do with your life. I mean, he was just the most incredible man, and the 4-minute mile was a small part of what he did. And Eliud has this unbelievable Zen-like quality, and what he says, and when he says it, there are just some absolute nuggets. And what he did, we were the team. And as you say, the London Marathon, team of 80 people who are passionate about trying to help people to be the best they can be, whether it's the everyday athlete or the absolute, GOAT, the greatest of all time, Eliud Kipchoge. And it was an incredible experience to be part of that team. So Dave Brailsford led the team. Valentine Trow, who is Eliud's manager, and myself was sort of a leadership team. And then you had these incredible teams operating to find pacers, to look at the new formation, to, go into wind tunnels. You had Ben Ainsley Racing as part of it, looking at the whole wind. You had our operational team getting the course, resurfacing it in places, changing the banking on a roundabout. I mean, it was just the level of detail that was gone into the nutrition, every water bottle that Elliot drank out of was discarded, picked up, and then weighed afterwards, so that they knew exactly the amount of liquid that he was taking in his body. If you look very closely, there's a great film out at the moment. If you look very closely, actually, one of the first things they do when he finishes, crosses the line, jumps on a scale because they were weighing him afterwards. The level of detail.
No, I saw an early copy of the film. Incredible, isn't it? I think everyone should watch it.
Yeah. So it's an honor to be part of that sort of thing. It doesn't come around too often. And I think that whole family connection was lovely for me to just be part of the team that helped Elliot show the world what he said, which was no human is limited.
I guess that's the point of the London Marathon, isn't it? You just mentioned it's about helping every single person be the best that they can be. So Eliud Kipchoge breaks 2 hours with this incredible team of help, looking at all the kind of small margins everywhere. Okay, great. That allowed him to be the best that he can be. But that's maybe not relevant for me, or for you, or for the single mum, or for the busy executive, or for the school teacher, for the school cook, the cleaner. Right, their ceiling or their potential is different. Not better, not worse, just different. And that's this overriding message I'm getting through from you, Hugh, which has given me tingles because I haven't experienced it yet. I'm days away from going on that part of my journey for the first time. I know I'm going to learn about myself. But like you, I believe that everyone has got their own marathon. For some people, their local park run is their version of a marathon, or I guess even their version of a 2-hour marathon. Right? For someone, depending on your physical health, just getting round the 5K park run at your local park, that may be your version of a marathon. But it speaks to this idea that we all have unlimited potential and we all need help to be the best versions of ourselves.
And that is it. It is about help. It's trying to get help. It's being open to help. And we will only ever be the best we can be if we get help. And it doesn't matter whether you're Eliud Kipchoge. It doesn't matter whether you're the single parent. Someone's got to look after your kids when you're not there. So someone's got to help you. And it's trying to work out what you can control. It's trying to work out what you want to do. It's not about measuring yourself against these gods of the sport. It's just about doing it for yourself and having it in your heart that you just want to achieve something that will be positive, that will build your self-esteem, because too much of society just takes away people's self-esteem.
Yeah.
And the marathon can really, really help build it. And Bobby said it so perfectly in that text at the start about the feeling, which is just so incredibly positive.
Only a few days to go for me, Hugh. Any advice for me before the big event?
I think don't do anything new is the first one. So you've been on the journey for 18 months. I always say to people, if you're used to having a beer beforehand or a wine or whatever you do beforehand, before you run, or that's what you do, just do that. Just because otherwise you start worrying. You'll be playing all the things through in your head about what's going to go on the next day. So firstly, just try and do what you're used to doing. That's the number one thing. Try not to get carried away at the start. You'll have the crowd, you'll have people. I always remember My wife, I wrote a training program for her, and she was doing it. I think this was 2009 before we had our first child, and she'd done her best half marathon, and she wanted to put this pressure of a time on her. And I said, fine, and sort of said, we'll pace it this way. And only found out she said it was one of the, she's now going to put your listeners off. She said it was one of the worst experiences of her life. But she only found out about 3 months later that she basically ran a PB for the first 8 miles. So she just got so carried away by the crowd and what was going on. It's a bit downhill. It's like, so relax. Don't do anything new, and absolutely put your name on your vest, on your T-shirt. You'll want your name changed by the end of it, I promise you, because you'll be sick of hearing it. I
have heard that don't go off too fast.
Yeah.
I've heard, in fact, Helen said to me many times, whether it was a London Marathon or any other event, biggest mistake, you get carried away with the adrenaline, you start going out too fast, and you pay for it later.
You do.
So thank you for that advice.
Yep.
Hugh, I've got to say, I really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you making the journey up to the studio. I think what you and your team are doing is absolutely incredible. I'm so delighted that I'm going to join that journey of other fellow London marathoners, whether people who compete or they watch or they give to charity. The podcast is called Feel Better, Live More. When we feel better in ourselves, we get more out of our life. Have you got any final words of wisdom for people listening to the show?
Wow. So, I think just trying to have fun in life generally. You feel better when you're smiling. You feel more positive when you're smiling. And enter that ballot. It'll open on the 2nd of October, the day before the marathon. Even though if you think you can't, I promise you, you can. And I just want to thank you so much for inviting me here. I think what you're doing in terms of just promoting health and, I love you're trying different things, the nasal breathing, the barefoot running. I know you've got the Vivo shoes on, but you're experimenting with different parts of it and doing it in a natural way. And I think that everyone should just do it for themselves. And then one last thing I just want to say, because you made a commitment on air with Chris Evans that got you here. You said you would help us in increasing the diversity of the London Marathon. And Rongan, I would just so like you to help us to do that. We will be on that journey together. And I'd just love to hear your story afterwards and see how it felt for you. But thank you so much for inviting me here.
My pleasure, for sure. I'd love to do everything I can help to improve the pickup and the diversity. And I have no doubt this will not be the last time we speak on the podcast together. But I guess for now, I'll see you on the start line. So what did you think? Did you enjoy listening? Do you feel inspired? Are you going to put your name down in the ballot? Go on. If you're not sure, if you're umming and ahhing, what have you got to lose? If you don't put your name down, you ain't going to get in. If you do and you get a place and you've got a decision to make, what are you going to do? How will you fit it in? I've got to be honest, as you've already heard me say, simply saying yes last year to doing the London Marathon has already transformed so many aspects of my life, irrespective of what actually happens in the event this weekend. So I'd encourage you, if you're not sure, give it a go, pop your name down. It opens this weekend. It's only open for a few days. See what happens. Or maybe it's not a marathon. Maybe it's something else. Maybe the conversation's inspired you to step a little bit outside your own comfort zone. Whatever it is, please let me, Hugh, the London Marathon, let us know on social media what you thought, what your learnings were, what you might challenge yourself to do next year. Honestly, we would all love to hear. Before we finish today, before you take off, I really do want to let you know about Friday 5. It's my weekly newsletter. It contains 5 short doses of positivity to get you ready for each weekend. It can be a practical tip for your health, a book or article that I've been reading, a quote that's caused me to stop and reflect. Basically, anything that I feel would be helpful to share. I honestly get such wonderful feedback from my Friday 5 readers. Many of you tell me that it is one of the only weekly emails that you actively look forward to receiving. So if that sounds like something you would like to receive each Friday, you can sign up for free at drchatterjee.com/Friday5. And if you did enjoy listening to the podcast and found the content useful, please do share it with your friends and family, either on social media or just directly with them. Please also do consider leaving a review or whichever podcast platform you listen on. It really does make a difference. If you're new to my content, you may be interested to know that I've written 4 books that are available to buy all over the world. I've written about all kinds of different topics like physical health, mental health, nutrition, sleep, stress, behavior change, weight loss. Whatever you're interested in health related, I've probably written something on it already. Do check out those books. And finally, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week. Please do press follow on whichever podcast platform you listen on, and you will be notified when my latest conversation comes out. Remember, you are the architect of your own health. Making lifestyle changes is always worth it, because when you feel better, you live more.